Hi everyone, I hope that you can hear me. We'll start the session in a few minutes. Just wait in case other people are joining. We start in less than 3 minutes, I think. Thank you. Okay, so just wanted to tell you that if you want to ask any question, I activated the Q&A feature on Teams, so you can ask question personally and show them publicly if you want to share them with other people. And at the end, I will have a look at them and we can try to answer them, obviously. Okay, so well, let's start. First of all, thank you for tuning in my Azure DevOps session. And I wanted to give some feedback about my experience using build agents and using Azure functionality to get some flexibility, performance, and cost improvement. Also, for this session, I assume that you are a little bit familiar with the Azure pipeline, Docker, and Azure. So well, if you have any question, you can obviously ask them anyway. Okay, so well, let's start. For our small menu, I will try to do some presentation and also with some demonstration. We are obviously not failing. And after that, where we can have some Q&A session if needed. So first of all, I just wanted to give a big thank you for the Global Azure Virtual community because, well, this was set up in just a few weeks and well, gave me the opportunity to make this session today. So let me introduce myself. My name is Vivien Fabin. So I'm currently working in a company named Infinite Square in Paris. I was awarded by the MVP program this year, so I'm really grateful to Microsoft. And I've been working with Azure DevOps Well since 2011. I'm passionate with ALM and clean architecture, and lately also about Blazor and Docker. And well, if you have any question after the session or anytime, you can try to contact me on Twitter, LinkedIn, on my personal blog, or in the French blog of Infinite Square. And just to give a little bit more context from where I'm coming from the company Infinite Square, where we are accompanying customers, helping them and advising them, and also training them. But also we are also doing some development, some software, obviously. We are Microsoft partners, so we are mainly working, obviously, on the Microsoft technologies. And we, even if all of my colleagues, as well as myself, are mainly developers, we also have our own subjects. So Office 365, Azure, mobile apps, and for myself, for instance, Azure DevOps. And just we have two solutions, one which is named InWing to manage events, like virtual events, like Azure Bootcamp, for instance, and also another platform named Hockeyfish to manage your files on Azure, in an Azure storage, where you can keep them inside of your subscription. All right, so well, let's start a little bit. So I wanted, to quote one of my guru, obviously, named Martin Woodward. Maybe you already know him from Microsoft, and well, he gave this line: 88 years of free open source built in 8 months with Azure Pipelines. So this was like 8 months right after Microsoft announced that they were giving a free pipelines, free build minutes for open source project, and already accumulated like 88 years of build minutes. So yeah, of course, Azure DevOps is quite used today. So just wanted to make sure. And when you want to start with Azure DevOps and use some build agent, you have obviously one very easy way, which is to use the Microsoft hosted agents, right? So you don't have anything to do, just push your source code and, well, use the build agent from Microsoft, which contains all of the tools necessary, .NET, Python, JavaScript, and so on. And it's very practical, obviously. However, let me quote also another thing, which I have heard, I don't know how many times during my career, which is from one of my colleagues, for instance. Sorry, but our pipeline takes 20 minutes to complete, and I am fifth in the queue. Can you come back in 2 hours, please? Yeah, so this is something that I can hear very often, and usually we have a few ways to address this problem. So the easiest way, obviously, is just adding some Microsoft hosted agents, right? So, when you are trying to use Azure pipeline, you are limited with one job running in parallel at basic. But you can also buy for $40 per month another pipeline where you can run, obviously, many jobs in parallel. So it can solve some problem, especially if you have many builds to run in parallel. This is the easiest way, obviously. Or you have the possibility to go a little bit deeper, go for the next level, and obviously use Azure to do a little bit more advanced stuff. So our goal will be to manage our own build agent, to set up our own build agent. So the benefits from that is that we are going to be able to get a faster build time because we are going to be able to reuse some cache, such as just doing a simple git pull instead of cloning the whole repository every time. Also a Docker step cache, obviously. So if during your Docker build you have like, I don't know, a Node.js installation and so on, you can do it at the beginning and Docker is just going to skip it the next time and keeping the step in cache, obviously. And you also have some cache for NPM packages as well as NuGet packages, which can help to improve your build time a lot. And also, I think that you get easier debugging with the build because something that I hear very often is just, oh, the build just failed. And well, you go to the the build logs and you try to read the logs, but it's not so obvious all the time. And personally, as a developer, when I have a problem, I like to use the tool that I used to. So obviously, if you own your own build agent, you can connect to it. You can run some script, run your tools like you would do on your own computer. And you also get some Azure credit optimization, because we will see later we have some possibilities to just be able to run some builds for only a few Azure credits. All right, so I hope that what you were interested in, because that's obviously what I'm going to talk about and do some demonstration about. So what can help us on Azure? We have a service named Azure Container Instances, which is able to start a container directly from the Azure CLI, the Azure command line. This is obviously the simplest way, and that's what we are going to see first. And then we have also another possibility, which is using Azure virtual machines. And you can install your build agent on it, obviously. And if you're using Docker, you have an even easier way to set up all of this, which is using the Docker machine tool. And this is what we are going to do in the next step. So first of all, let's have a look about Azure Container Instances. The main advantages that you will get with creating a build agent using Azure Container Instances is that, well, you literally get a build agent running in minutes, but nothing else. Just run a command line, wait for a few minutes, and you are ready to go. Obviously, you also have some pay-as-you-go pricing. So usually you just start your container when you need it, and when you don't need it, well, you just delete it, so you don't have to pay for it. And you get some isolation because you install one agent on your container, which is not going to be bothered by other running builds, obviously. So, well, enough for the slides so far, and well, let's try to see some demonstration with that. So hopefully the demonstration are not going to fail. Obviously, I have prepared a few scripts to not lose too much time on the subject. So the first demonstration I wanted to give is to use the Azure Container Instances to create a build agent directly from Microsoft build agent images. So if you weren't aware about that, Microsoft has published already some build agent Docker images that you can use directly on your own computer or in Azure Container Instances. So you have all of the information on their website, and you just need to specify which Azure DevOps account you are going to use, what the security, the password, the personal access token you are going to use, as well as the Microsoft image. And that's all. So for instance, I can use Azure Container Create so well, let's go to Azure in the same time. So to try to do almost everything in quite easy to understand, let's create a new resource group on Azure in Europe, and let's name it resource group GAV for Global Azure Virtual, obviously. And let's go to it. All right. So we are going to modify a little bit our command line. So we specify the resource group, and we specify our build agent. So let's create a new build agent. So for instance, the agent bond, and we can specify also the Microsoft image, as well as the performance that we want to give to our build agent. So 1 CPU and 2 GB of memory. And then we are going to specify the Azure DevOps configuration, right? So my account is my name, Vivian, and you also need to create a personal access token. Which is very common using Azure DevOps. I will give some link in the documentation if needed. And then precise again the name of our build agent. And finally, the pool of agent where you want to register it. And that's all. So let's try to run this first script if I can. So yeah, first I need to go in the demo folder and then I should be able to run this script. And I forgot to save my script, so obviously it didn't take too much time. Let's try again. All right. So it should start. Okay, so we are not going to wait for this script to finish for a very good reason, is that the Microsoft standard images are quite big, as you can expect. They are installing every tool that developers need, so Java, .NET, Python, JavaScript, and so on. So the images is worth of a few gigabytes. So it's going to take around 10 minutes to complete. So instead of waiting together during 10 minutes, let's see one container I created just before. So the agent Smith, right? So this is a container instance. And if we have a look on its properties, we can see that I tried that few hours ago, and it started at 16 and completed 10 minutes later. All right. And well, it just registered on Azure DevOps. If you don't trust me, let's have a look. So I created just before, obviously, a team project name, Global Azure Virtual. And if we go in the settings of the team project, and if we go in the agent pools, in the pool global Azure Virtual I just specified before, we can see our different agents here, right? So we have an agent Smith here, which was registered just before. Okay, so this is one way to do that, but well, it's going to take a lot of time, like 10 minutes every time you are going to create it. And even if you try to do some optimization, like not deleting it and stopping it instead, one problem we have with Azure Container Instances is that, well, because it's serverless, the container is going to be mounted on any possible server. So every time, even when you just want to start it, Azure will need to download the image once again. So it's a little bit too long. So let's see if we can do a little bit better to go faster. So to be able to get build agent a little bit faster, instead of using an agent with all of the tools installed from the start, we can try to create our own build agent. Fortunately, Microsoft obviously described how to do that, and mainly we are just going to create our own container using a Docker file and a script named star.sh, which is just going to download the build agent binaries inside of the container and start it. So I already prepared all of this, obviously. So the Docker file and the start.sh coming from Microsoft. And well, let's try to open a new terminal. And let's see something which is, I think, personally quite incredible. So on Azure, you have a service named Azure Container Registry, which is basically used to store Docker images. But more than that, you can also use this service to build a new image directly in the cloud without having to install Docker on your own computer, which I think personally is kind of crazy, kind of good. So if I start this command line, it is going to take the current context. So I was inside of the my folder. It's going to take the Docker file and the script file and upload them on Azure. And it's going to build my Docker image, basically. So I'm not going to cover in details the content. Everything is specified inside of the documentation, but basically you get a container from a Ubuntu image. And obviously all the dependencies are installed. And then the script start.sh is executed to download the build agent binaries and execute them after. Configure them with some properties and so on. Something important, if you want to install inside of your containers additional tools, because obviously this first image is without any tools, so you can't do any .NET builds or whatever. You need to improve your Docker file and between this line add obviously some installation of .NET tools and so on. All right, so the build finished in 57 seconds. And well, once we have created our own custom image, we can now run it directly in Azure Container Instances again. So let's use this script, not to modify and not having to do everything all the time. So let's create an agent hunt this time. Using the image we created just before, so on my Azure Container Registry and with the image name Docker agent, some performance, 1 CPU and 2 GB of memory, the username to connect to the registry. So if you want to give more security, you can create the service principal also. And then the information to connect to Azure DevOps. All right, so it should be okay. Let's come back a little bit higher and then run our ACI custom run image. This is saved this time. Okay. All right, and this time, hopefully, the creation of the container instance is going to be very fast, not 10 minutes. So this is running. We can go a little bit on Azure to check on everything. So let's go back on the containers we created just before. So we have 2 of them. If I click on the one that I just created before, so ACI agent hunt, so it has already created the image and already created the container, so it was really fast. And if we go on Azure DevOps and maybe try to refresh the page, well, we have the ACI agent hunt, which is already registered, and I guess in just a few seconds, yes, it should become online. So you get a build agent really in literally seconds using Azure Container Instances. We can also have a look on the previous one. Yeah, when it's still downloading. Kind of taking a lot of time. Hopefully it will be finished at the end of the demonstration. Okay, and I have one last scenario using Azure Container Instances, which is a little bit more advanced. So fortunately, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes to do that, but I have created some demonstration directly on my team project. So using Azure Container Instances, we can get a build agent literally in seconds. And well, let's try to see a scenario using Azure Pipeline in a build, for instance. And let's try to imagine that at the beginning we have no build agent. We use Azure Pipeline server jobs to call an Azure function which is going to start our build agent using Azure Container Instances. Then run our build, and then, well, just delete our container. So that's what I just demoed inside of this pipeline. If we have a look inside, I have 3 jobs. One which is just start the agent, a second one which is to execute the build, and then a last one to stop the agent. In the start agent, I just use some task, which is the task to call an Azure function. And just before, I created an Azure function which is able to start an Azure Container Instance using our build image previously built. Then in the next one, we have the build. So in this demonstration, obviously, I didn't do anything, so just a script doing absolutely nothing. But in more advanced scenario, obviously, you would have done some .NET build and so on. And on the stop agent, we call the same Azure function, but this time specifying the stop parameter. And well, if we have a look on the content of this function. So well, I will not go into details on how to create an Azure function, but you can write Azure function directly from the Azure portal. And using Microsoft SDK, you can create your container directly from your Azure function and well, delete it directly from Azure function also, specifying obviously some parameter. All right, so well, if we try to run this, sorry. Too many windows open. Yes, this one, and if we try to run it. All right. So once again, everything I have set up will be published on GitHub and Azure DevOps if you want to try it by yourself, obviously. So our first job, which is just to start our Azure Container Instances, so just by calling our Azure function. So this is already done. And the next one is going to try to build, but especially on our container instances, which is going to be started by the previous tasks. So if we have a look inside of our previous resource group, in fact, we can see that a new agent was created, which is ACI agent K. And if we have a look inside of the log, we can see that, well, it is going to create our build agent. And once our build agent will be started, the build will be able to be performed. And right after, it will be able to be deleted. Okay. Well, maybe we don't need to wait for that, and we will come back a little bit later on that and check that everything is fine, obviously. Okay, so these are the main possibility you get with Azure Container Instances, or really a lot of flexibility. But unfortunately, using Azure Container Instances, you get some drawbacks. So the first one, which is for me one of the most important one, is that you can't build any Docker image inside an Azure Container Instance. So as a Azure Container Instance is already a Docker image, you can't do some Docker command line from your container instance. That's personally my main drawback. You also have some drawbacks regarding container density, because one of the most appealing, I think, one of the most interesting feature in a Docker container is that you can put a lot of containers on the same machines. And since these containers are well isolated, well, you can share the performance between these containers, and obviously, containers will be able to use the performance needed when others are not using them. So that's all for Azure Container Instances. And well, let's see another one, which is maybe a little bit more complicated, but to my opinion, one of my favorite. So you get more control and more performance, in my opinion. So advantages, best cost performance, because for Azure Container Instances, you can only install one build agent inside of your container, but for an Azure virtual machine, usually Microsoft recommend to not install at maximum one build agent per processor available. So if you have a machine with 4 processors, you can install 4 build agents. So it's quite optimizing cost and performance. So you get obviously the container density. So if other containers are not used, their performance can be used by others. And you also get the Docker tools directly from the virtual machine. So I think it's a little bit easier to be able to debug why your build is not working anymore. So for that, I prepared also a small demo about that. So let's come back to the scripts. So this time, how is it going to work? So obviously you could create an Azure virtual machine directly from the Azure portal and then install the Docker services and then install the build agents. But you also have another command line, which is named Docker machine, which can do everything for you. So if you use this command line, Docker machine is going to create a virtual machine and install the Docker service directly for you on Azure. So the usage is just to precise using Azure, precising your Azure subscription, which resource group, so we can create it in another one, and the location, the user, the size of the VM, and also the name of the VM. All right, so well, I could start this script, for instance. Let's change everything. All right, so 04. So Docker machine is a tool which is not installed when you install Docker on your computer. So maybe you will have to check how to install it on your computer. It's just some binary that you need to put inside of your Docker folder, and then you have access to this. And I didn't execute the right script. Sorry. Yes, I guess it will be better. And I did something wrong, probably. Invalid command line, VM build 2, standard for us. Azure location, West Europe. Found extra arguments. Yeah, obviously that's a real demo. Okay, all right. Well, I will have a look a little bit later with that. But well, when you execute this script, you should have this kind of log right after. Okay, so the script is going to ask you to authenticate yourself on your Azure subscription, and then it's going to configure everything for you, create the virtual machine, create the IP address, etc., as well as installing Docker directly on your virtual machine. And then you are good to go. So, well, anyway, I was not going to wait for the script to end, because obviously when you create a virtual machine, it's going to take a few minutes. And then, well, when your machine is created, you can use also another Docker machine command line, which is named Docker machine auth, which enable you to connect your local Docker with a remote Docker. So if I do some Docker PS to check all of the containers running using on the Docker service, I should not see the containers which are on my own computer, but I should see the containers which are directly on the Docker machine, which was set up on Azure. So this is very practical, and if you are kind of new to Docker, I think it's one of the easiest way to get everything set up quite easily. So if we have a look here, we can see we already have one agent running, because when I was preparing everything, but let's create a new one, for instance. So for this is the second script I executed just before. Let's create another agent Nikita. URL should be good, token as well. The pool is fine also. Let's precise the name again. And this time I use another image, which is kind of the same, but just on a Docker Hub. All right, so let's try to run that. Okay, and let me just explain these two lines. These lines are kind of dangerous in terms of security because these two lines are going to give access to these specific containers to the Docker service. But this is what is going to enable us to use a Docker command line from our Docker build agent. So we get the famous Docker in Docker system. If I execute again Docker PSA, I should see my new agent, Nikita agent. And if we have a look on Azure DevOps, not this one, Azure DevOps, so we can see that the build has completed, by the way. So yeah, we managed to start an agent and delete it right after. So probably our agent K disappeared from our resource group, as you can see. It was deleted. And yeah, so yes, I wanted to check about our agent pools and see if our new agent Nikita was added correctly. And yes, we have our agent Nikita, which was added directly on Azure, our Azure DevOps. All right, that's mainly all for the demonstration. And yes, just something, I didn't do anything as a demonstration about that, but since our Docker machine is a virtual machine on Azure, you can use the auto shutdown and auto start functionality to be able to save cost and make sure that you don't pay when your build agent is not running. So there is one technique that I use very often. So I created on Azure Marketplace, on Visual Studio Marketplace, a small task to enable me to start and stop virtual machine. So directly from Azure, you already have a functionality which enable you to stop virtual machine at a specific time, like every day at 8 p.m., for instance. But the start VM was lacking, so I created a small extension which enable you to do that. And usually in our projects, what we do is always shut down the machine when outside of the working hours, so at around 7 or 8 p.m. And we never start our virtual machine automatically, but we add this task, the start Azure VM, inside of our build pipeline in parallel. So when this is the first build of the day, it's going to start the build machine and the build will be successful, and during the day the build machine will stay up, so we don't need to start it again. And at the end of the day, it's going to be shut down automatically to save cost. It's going to reduce, I don't know, maybe by 2 or 3 around the bill for the virtual machine. So quite interesting in my opinion. All right, so that's mainly all for this demo. So for me, the main drawback, obviously, of this method is that it requires more knowledge and more maintenance on your build agent. But well, you get more control over what is done, more performance also, some cache optimization, etc. So very often, I think that's what we need to do. All right, so well, that's mainly everything. I hope that you're still alive, obviously. So in summary, the simplest scenario, obviously, is to use Microsoft hosted agents. So if you are not very familiar with all of this, I still advise to use a Microsoft hosted agent, and I still use them at the beginning of the project. But really, when you get some scenario when you want to have some builds, very fast running builds, and still be able to manage it very easily, usually I use Azure with a virtual machine as well as Docker to be able to get a fast build and also to get tools to be able to debug my build very easily. All right, so well, that's all. Well, thank you for listening to me for these few minutes. I hope that it was interesting and you maybe learned something. So let me check if by any chance we have some questions. Okay, thank you very much. Is it only for build pipeline? I guess custom agents can be spinned up for integration test too. Am I right? Yes, that's totally right. In fact, the system I just presented in this session can be used in a release pipeline, in build pipeline, and really for doing any kind of stuff. So obviously, I wanted to show for building something, but you can use that also for running integration tests. You can do some more advanced stuff like running SQL Server container and run your test against it, and then stop your container. So yeah, it's kind of powerful. I saw somewhere that Azure DevOps with Kubernetes was used for running tests. Have you tried similar setup? Oh, so I don't know if you are familiar with Kubernetes, but I love Kubernetes, obviously, but I need to, I don't know, maybe warn you. Kubernetes is, in my opinion, a little bit more operation, infrastructure oriented. So definitely, if you're a developer and you have to maintain your build systems, I'm not sure I would really advise using Kubernetes. Only for this subject, because you will have to know more stuff about infrastructure like networking and so on. So this is not mandatory, in my opinion, for running tests, especially for the second scenario I provided you. In many projects, this is a very standard way of doing things. We create a build machines, and then we host some SQL server inside of containers. And during our builds, well, we target this container to be able to use to run some integration test and be able to have some real data behind. So Kubernetes is not really mandatory for me. But on the contrary, if your company, that's sometimes possible, if your company is already using Kubernetes, well, of course, it's probably better instead of creating your own virtual machine or using Azure Container Instances, well, get access to the Kubernetes and well, create your containers directly inside of Kubernetes and get maybe a little bit the same stuff. You have access to a lot of advanced scenarios using Kubernetes, but a little bit more complicated. So maybe just be careful with that. Okay. All right. So I hope I answered correctly and your question. If it wasn't really correct and you want more information, well, feel free to contact me on Twitter and so on. And well, thank you very much and have a nice day.